Hello everyone, this is Burgermeisterin and welcome to Legacy Links. What if people of the past could meet the people of today? In this Burgermeisterin series, we find modern-day counterparts to historic Luxembourgish figures, showing that even across centuries, values like strength, creativity, and vision continue to flow through time. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Burgermeisterin. My name is Julia and we are doing the first episode of the sub-series with my friend Samantha Dula here with me at the Radio R studio. And we are going to talk about Sam's experience with beekeeping. She has been doing that for a number of years now, started in the United States and continued in Luxembourg. And we are establishing a link between Sam's beekeeping project and Lilian Steichen Sandberg, who was a pioneer in sustainable agriculture, introducing goat dairy farming to the United States and advocating for its health benefits at a time when it was not widely accepted. Her work emphasized the importance of natural food sources, gut health, and self-sustaining farming. Similarly, Sam's dedication to beekeeping follows a parallel path, promoting natural, sustainable food production and raising awareness about the critical role of pollinators in human and environmental health. Both women, though separated by time and industry, share the same nationality and a passion for ethical and sustainable food production, environmental stewardship, and public education about the unseen benefits of nature's smallest contributors, whether through goat milk or honeybees. So Sam, thanks again for coming and for participating in this small initiative of mine. And let's maybe start with your personal side of story, so personal impact of beekeeping. If we think about Lilian, she was a pioneer in bringing sustainable farming ideas to the United States through goat dairy. How did your passion for beekeeping start and what inspired you to take it beyond a hobby now?
Yes, definitely. So my passion here with beekeeping began when I was young. I was in high school, actually, and I went to a special school in the US that was based all around conservation. So it was an environmental semester school, and I was very lucky to attend that school in my senior year of high school. And really that opportunity opened up my eyes. Being already very interested in nature and the environment, I was able to get my first taste of beekeeping. Yeah, it was really something, and they had bees, and I was able to interact with them. Yeah, I'd never done anything like that before.
Yeah, this is super special. Like, I personally don't have a lot of acquaintances, let alone friends, who are involved in beekeeping. And it is a very cool experience, I feel like. Well, so that was your public school, right? That, had this initiative and like the entire semester. Wow, that's...
Yeah, so it is really impressive. A lot of schools now, especially here in Luxembourg as well, they have bees. And so I feel the younger you are to be exposed to the environment, the better.
Yeah.
And then I ended up moving on to uni. I went to school actually for environmental science. So I got my degree in this, and then I decided to take on a part-time job working for my university where we were studying bees, and I had the chance to really dive very deep into beekeeping with professors who had dedicated their entire life to research on bees.
Right.
And so this was really impressive to understand ecology and chemical aspects of beekeeping. We were raising bees for two different purposes, for research and then for production. So two sides. And in this case, then I was able to learn even more about beekeeping very quickly. And it was quite the experience that then I carried on to then a professional position in beekeeping.
Yeah. Would you also say, so why did you go to uni?
So I went to Penn State University in the US.
Right. Would you say that not maybe a state, but a particular territory has more benefits for beekeeping in terms of, environmental benefits than the others?
Yeah, in the US, it's interesting because there are a lot of incentives to beekeeping in some places that you do reside, so in certain states. So you can actually receive like more tax benefits in order to promote more people to beekeep in the US. But then again, there's a lot of hobbyists that are beekeepers, and then there's also a large majority of beekeepers in the US who are professional, large-scale beekeepers.
Right.
So
yeah, it's amazing to think about it as a large-scale business because they're so tiny. I don't know, they're just so tiny.
They're very tiny. Yeah, so this is an interesting agricultural endeavor, and, we are raising bees for a variety of reasons, so...
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. So working with bees, it requires a lot of patience, dedication. You need to be very observant as a person, right? How has this changed the way you see life? Because I would imagine that it can contribute quite a lot and it's quite helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I could say that couldn't be more true in this way. I've always, like I said, had a really deep connection with the environment and nature, and this beekeeping endeavor and project has really allowed me, no matter where I live in the world, to extend this. And agriculture is something I also am very interested in, and obviously it's very important for us to understand how to sustainably continue to grow our food and produce food. And so this is a true test for us humans to understand how to work with nature and not against it. In this sense, I feel like we as humans are now separating a bit from nature and the environment. And so especially with technology, how do we bind and how do we integrate these two ideas together? And there are a lot of ways actually that you can integrate technology into beekeeping. My full-time position is in technology, and so I find this very interesting. And so some of the ways you can integrate, weighing your colonies, with a scale and monitoring the climate is very important. And so these are things that we can rely on this technology as a beekeeper to really get a better sense and understanding of the health of our hives and the colonies that we keep. So I think that there's this very important part of not kind of fully separating ourselves from the natural world, but also integrating new technology into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. Totally does. I feel like at the speed with which the world is developing right now, and by all means, I mean technology and, machine learning and AI, I feel like there's so many opportunities to benefit from that. And yes, okay, a lot of people are saying that there are a lot of things to be cautious of, which is understandable. But at the same time, if we all just learned how to take advantage in a good way, in a positive way, of these opportunities that are presented to us, the world would have been such a much lovelier place.
Yes, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
And in this sense too, beekeeping and agriculture in general, it's very important to collect data. This is something that we can leverage technology for because it is really important to understand, many different variables to better care for our plants or our bees or,
Yeah, totally. That ties very well, I think, with the next questions. I want to talk to you about the relationship between bees, sustainability and agriculture too, especially modern agriculture. In the early 20th century, getting back to Lilian here, goat dairy was seen as quite unconventional, much like how people are now rediscovering the importance of raw honey as compared to or as opposed to, I should say, the industrial honey that is produced by means of additives. Yeah. Do you see parallels between how people viewed Lilian's work back then and how they perceived beekeeping today?
Yeah, I think there's definitely overlap in this. especially with the fact that beekeeping today I see can be misunderstood. And it can also be very romanticized.
Okay.
And I think agriculture, farming in general, like you see online now, a lot of people, picking up this new way of connecting with the environment, which is great. But I will say that there's a deeper role, or there's a deeper practice here in understanding the ecological side of and implications that these bees play in the environment. And so they're not just, there for our
entertainment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our entertainment. Yes, that's a great way to put it. It's really essential to know the methods of those who are producing your food. And or know your beekeeper if you can. Know your farmer, or understand where your food is coming from, and supporting these people who are trying to produce food, because this is essential in really promoting this idea of locality in agriculture and sustainability.
Like local.
Yes. And so, it's great to support, obviously, even like grocery stores or food stores that do have local producers.
Yep.
This is great. Here in Luxembourg, this is very common, which is fabulous. We have great sourcing of our food in this country, especially considering some of our food stores do put this first. They want to work with producers who are local. I love this. I'm sure if you look at some of the websites of these businesses, you can read all about this, which I'm very impressed coming from the US in some ways, because this is a normal here. And in the US, it's something that we're still trying to move towards. And I would say that, the way that honey, for example, the way that it's produced is important. And it's understanding the health of the bees, as well as the sustainability and all the practices that go into this final product that you pick up at the store or from your local farmer's market. I think it's very important for us to understand the technique that goes into the production of this product, and the hard work that goes into it. I would say that if you are a beekeeper yourself, or if you've ever done any type of farming, you could agree that it's a lot more work than you would think.
Yeah.
Yes. And so this is very valuable to understand that impact and really where the product comes from, how it's made. I think this is something that consumers are very interested in nowadays, which I think is great, because we're not just going and picking something off of the shelf. We're reading the label and the ingredients and where this product came from and who produced it and why does this matter to me? Like, what impact does this have on me in the environment and the larger part of, maybe the country you live in? So I think that this is a step in the right direction for agriculture and production of our food.
I was thinking that Luxembourg is indeed one of the few countries that I've seen that happening. When you would come to a restaurant and I would literally present you with the menu that is like, this is this season, we just changed the menu because like the season has changed, and now like we have these new pies, but we don't have like something that we used to have previously because we are out of season basically, and we don't have those ingredients. And I'll be like, wow, this has almost never happened to me before. And in Luxembourg it happens pretty often. And I was like, wow. I was also thinking, since we're talking about the connection between the practices that the farmers use and the end product that you have basically on your table. Well, as you know, after the Second World War, the industrial agriculture picked up speed, and that's understandable because the good side of the industrial agriculture is the price. It's the value at which the grocery items are produced at, right? But then the downside of that is all the pesticides and herbicides and whatnot that go into the soil as a mean, of that production. And if all over the place we've got the soil that is pretty much poisoned with chemicals, and then on that soil, not only you've got the crops, but also all other sorts of, flowers that the bees, in this case, right, they use to pollinate. It's all, you see how interconnected all of that is?
Yeah, very.
I just literally thought about that now.
Yep. Yeah, it's all very connected.
Yeah.
We're extremely connected to nature, and maybe we don't realize this, in our day-to-day because we are not, in our society now, we're not interacting with nature on a day-to-day. Maybe you're lucky and you are. I'm very jealous if that's the case. Currently, this is a part-time project, so, but it is something to understand, and dive into, in the sense of this is still very connected to the environment. And we are very connected, and we rely on the environment, and so we need to understand and make sure we're taking care of it. We can farm in a more sustainable way and conserve water, or conserve the soil, or there's regenerative agriculture, which is something you can also
Thank you for mentioning it.
Yes,
this is amazing.
This is something that is really, really interesting, in the sense of making sure we're leaving the land better off than when we first started. With bees, the bees are interacting with these flowers and plants, definitely. I have bees here in Luxembourg. It's true that bees do forage up to 8 kilometers or more. And so we can't control what they're foraging on.
Well, since we started talking about the actual practices, whether goats in Lilian's case or bees in your case, you both had experience doing that in the United States. Well, she didn't have an experience doing that in Luxembourg, but you do. Would you say that the beekeeping practices differ over there and here?
I would say that they do. And I think really anywhere you go, they definitely do. Also, the bees differ. So there are different species of bees.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yes, there's so many. And when it comes to social insects that live in a community, like the bees that we keep, they're European honeybees. These are the ones that we're using for production of honey, primarily. And there's comb production, so wax, as well as propolis, which is a substance we use in makeup. And so this is another thing that's coming from the hive. So there's typically
medicine,
3 things. Yep. Yeah, exactly. The propolis is used in medicine. Yes. Very much so here in Europe.
Yeah.
And for sure. So these 3 things, they don't change wherever you go. These are what beekeepers are usually keeping their bees for, or they're keeping them for pollination purposes. So to pollinate crops, plants, trees. And so I would say, though, I've noticed these differences in more or less the beekeeping practices. And so every beekeeper, they're keeping bees in a little bit of a different way. Every beekeeper has their own style. It's nice to keep an open mind in this sense, because you can learn a lot from other beekeepers, because everybody has their own way of beekeeping. There are some practices that kind of stay the same, but I've noticed here in Europe that we have more of growing threat right now that is coming up here in Luxembourg, especially, and in the surrounding countries, so Germany, France. We have the Asian hornet, which is in Europe now, and this is now posing a significant risk to bees and colonies and beekeepers across the EU. And so this specific hornet, it preys on honeybees.
Oh.
This is something that can devastate different colonies if it's not managed. Here in Luxembourg, we are trying to educate beekeepers and the community to seek out resources if they find these hornets and their nests. So this is a great step in the right direction to ensure we can control this invasive species that has an impact on bees. There's also different ways to trap them. Beekeepers are now using traps. This is something I actually have to do this year. This is technically a pest that we are now tracking. And there are lots of pests when
Yeah.
it comes to beekeeping. And depending on where you are in the world, there may be other pests that are impacting your bees.
Is it a new phenomenon?
So this one is not a new phenomenon. It's just a new species that is here and has spread.
Can you visually differentiate between bees and them?
Yeah, they're about 2 to 3 centimeters long.
Okay.
They're usually dark brown or black. Their legs apparently are yellow tipped, so that can help you figure out what they are compared to other hornets. And their wings are darker and slightly smoky in color. So this is something to keep in mind. You can Google it, an Asian hornet, and what their nest looks like, because they're nesting in trees and or other other areas. So you can keep a lookout for them.
And you were saying that the way to you get rid of them is to you introduce those traps, I guess, in your beehives. I wonder, is there a risk that your own bees could be trapped?
Yeah, this is very true. Yes, you can trap your own bees. You can trap other creatures, insects, birds. Yes, so there's a specific trap for these that they're modifying to ensure that it's the best way to trap these specific hornets. But it is true that it's possible you can trap other things. But it's very important for us to trap them sooner rather than later, because they can cause a lot of devastation to the colonies, the number of colonies you have as a beekeeper here in Luxembourg.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's bad news.
Yeah, this is a one specifically impacting us right now currently here in Luxembourg and Germany and France and the surrounding areas.
Are they harmful for people?
No, not that I'm aware of. They're just a lot larger, so they're a little scary, a little intimidating.
Right.
They hang out front of the hive, and then they go inside, and then they grab some bees, and then they eat them. They can really, take down a colony. So in this way, this is one thing I've noticed, that in the U.S. I did not have this specific hornet present. Although in the U.S. we do have Africanized bees. They're found primarily in the southern part of the U.S. and these bees are a hybrid. So they were bred, European honeybees and African honeybees were bred together. And they were introduced into the U.S. in the 1950s. And this was primarily because, like I said, they're more productive bees, but they're more aggressive.
Okay.
And so as a beekeeper, there's a risk there with the aggression part of the bees. So they do not like a lot of human interaction with the colony. And so you really have to wear a bee suit when you're interacting with those bees, the Africanized one. They are more difficult with their behavior. So they're much more testy than the nice European honeybees, which are very chill in comparison.
Oh, those chill European bees. Well, I mean, it's a great transition, to be honest, show you the next question about you, like being a beekeeper, and then also you not just doing it for hobby. I mean, although it is a hobby for you compared to it's not your full-time job, right? But comparatively speaking, you can call yourself a small beekeeper entrepreneur. I have
been in the past.
And you have been in the past, yes. I would imagine that the difficulties and challenges of being a small entrepreneur in any area, they're quite similar with one another. But obviously, I would expect, beekeeping industry to have its own specificities and peculiarities. So can you talk to me about those?
Yeah, sure. I would say that in the U.S., I was, working as a beekeeper professionally. Here in Luxembourg, I'm on my way to doing so. It is a great place to be an entrepreneur. And I would say that it's been interesting to enter into the world of agriculture here in the country, because this country was really based upon agriculture.
Yeah.
And now we're moving in a different direction. Yeah, it's an interesting place to be going into agriculture when, again, the country's kind of moving away from agricultural practices here in some ways. But I would say that a challenge for beekeepers here and in other places in the world, like in the US, I think people don't realize how dependent beekeeping and obviously agriculture too is on the climate. And same with food production. And we forget this. And last year was an extremely rainy year in Luxembourg.
Horrible.
If you recall.
I do recall particularly because I met you, well, more than a year ago now. But about that time, I have a colleague at work, and he is a hobbyist beekeeper. And I used to buy honey off him pretty much all the time. It's like local, sustainable, not processed honey, amazing. And he started having problems with supply because exactly that. Like that year was horrible. He's like, I almost don't have any honey to distribute at the moment.
Yeah.
So it was, well, on a personal level, it was devastating. But obviously at his, being a small entrepreneur himself as well, that was quite devastating because you just, you can't really do much about it.
Exactly. And so it's super weather dependent. And, he was impacted. Many beekeepers here in Luxembourg were impacted by this last year. I was also impacted by this last year. Last year was my first year here in Luxembourg beekeeping, and it was a tough one.
Wow.
And some beekeepers, they didn't have any honey at all. Luckily, I did, which was great, but it's very weather dependent, so changes in temperature, rainfall, seasonal patterns in general really affect the nectar flow that the colony is going to have, as well as if the bees can fly. If it's raining a lot, then they're not going out of the colony and they're not collecting the nectar from the flowers. And so this can cause a disruption in the food source. And this is ultimately, nectar is also a food source for the colony. So you need to, as a beekeeper, watch your bees more closely if it's raining a lot. And so last year, this was exactly what a lot of beekeepers faced. And so then the colonies can starve. This is what you would want to prevent as a beekeeper. And it can really climate change can alter, even blooming of flowers. Not only the behavior of the bees and the impact on the colony, but then even just the plants that they're foraging on. So if it's not a great year for blooming, this is going to impact the colony as well. And it can impact beekeepers' overall profitability. And, if they can actually, sell their products, and if they don't have enough, then there's people who are looking for, honey, or maybe they're looking for wax. And unfortunately, you can't provide these things. So you're not able to fulfill the requests of your customers. So I see this as something that impacts really all beekeepers around the world who are selling honey or selling different products from the hive.
Yeah. It makes me think about like an artificial environment that you can create for them. And I guess this is exactly what the industrial beekeeping does usually. I don't know how would that look like greenhouses.
I would say with greenhouses, makes sense for, growing plants for sure. For bees, unfortunately, there's not really a way to create a smaller kind of ecosystem for them. They're super dependent on the outside. We can't control what they pollinate. They need to be out and about. So if anything, we haven't quite yet figured out a way to have climate not impact bees as much as it really is.
Okay. So would you then say that the industrial beekeeping is just about the numbers?
Yeah. So industrial beekeeping and large-scale beekeeping, and you find this in more developed countries like the US, they're using bees for pollination. So, for example, some of the most pollination that they're doing in the US is with the almond crop in California. So these beekeepers actually all over the country will have hives and colonies. Commercial beekeepers in the US have 300 hives or more. So this is a lot of bees.
Yeah.
And a lot of hives to keep up with.
Yes.
To put this in perspective, here in Luxembourg, I have only 6 hives as a hobbyist beekeeper. But in the US, this is on a much larger scale. This is, could be thousands of hives.
Yeah.
And so they are scattered around the country in different states, and then they will put them on trucks, and then they will ship them around to the farmland in which at this specific time when they know that the bloom is happening, and then they will place the bees on the property on pallets, and then the bees will go out and they will forage on the crop, and it's one crop usually.
Right.
So this is a very different way of controlling the whole process of production of almonds or whatever the crop may be that they're pollinating, but they're doing it at one time, and then they pick the bees up after the bloom is over, and then they will put them back on the pallets and then take them back to where they were originally. Here in Luxembourg, I have not seen this done as much. Of course, beekeepers can move their bees around as they need to, but I'm not currently aware of this large-scale movement of bees happening, and there's a lot of pros and cons related to that in the US and the impact on the bees and the health of the colonies.
Yeah.
It's a lot to manage, and it's also maybe not super sustainable in some ways.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Okay.
And here in Luxembourg, we have a lot of hobby beekeepers, primarily hobbyist beekeepers. So these are people who have anywhere from 1 hive to maybe 20 hives. And then they are doing it for fun or doing it for, whatever kind of product they're looking for, from the ones that I was just mentioning. And these bees are not being moved around like this.
What you just said goes quite well with my next question, effectively, because so you're saying that this large-scale beekeeping management doesn't really happen here in Luxembourg as opposed to the US. Would you do that here if you had the resources?
So there are a handful of professional beekeepers here and commercial beekeepers in Luxembourg. And I would say that right now they are not moving around their bees in this way. Maybe they need to move bees and adjust in the case of, they find that one area is maybe not as productive when it comes to food and forage for the bees. So they may move their bees to a different location, but they're not doing it seasonally depending on the crops here. Rape seed is something that we grow here in Luxembourg, and it's that yellow flower, those fields you see that are completely yellow. This is the flower that bees actually here love to pollinate, which is great for us because we get really nice honey from that. But I would say that we're not moving bees around based upon the crop bloom here in the country. And I would say I wouldn't necessarily want to move in this direction here, in the sense of it's not a sustainable beekeeping practice. I think it's better if you have bees that are obviously around the area that can pollinate these plants, but the movement of the bees to different bee yards or different fields, there's a lot of problems that the U.S. was experiencing of mixing of disease and pests. And different things that were happening where the bees were then spreading a lot of sickness and viruses to each other. And so I would say here in Luxembourg, it's actually great that we don't have this maybe large-scale beekeeping that's occurring in the country, and we're relying more on local colonies that are here from smaller, more beekeepers in the country, but less people who are, holding the bulk majority of the hives that are here in the country. The data here in Luxembourg, we don't have a lot of data currently on how many more beekeepers there are in the country and colonies. But back in 2015, they did a study, and there was about 6,000 colonies that they recorded here. The country does record how many colonies there are. You do have to register your colonies and the number of them that you have here in the country so that they can track them. And there was about close to 400 beekeepers back then. So I would imagine that number has gone up a lot since 2015.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. But it hasn't been yet recorded, and I would be curious to see, like, publicly it hasn't. So I would be curious to see how many more people there are here in the country beekeeping. I'm a new one, so since last year. So I would be add on to that number. I would say also a lot of beekeepers who are entrepreneurs will have to diversify in the sense of they cannot always rely on, you know, selling their product
revenue streams
of the seasonality of the product. And, you know, like you said, your coworker, he wasn't able to sell any honey, and so you'll find that a lot of beekeepers then will rely on other sources of kind of income in this way, and then that's usually through education and doing workshops or teaching about beekeeping, which is really a great segue to get more people involved in beekeeping and to keep it going and to get more people to be interested in it and understand, you know, how valuable this profession is.
Yeah, this is great because that was exactly my next question. Lilian, actually, also that was one of the ways, I guess, to educate the public. She used education and advocacy. She would literally go
all
over the country and do public speaking. Perhaps that would include workshops too about her goat dairy. And you just say that beekeepers like to diversify, which makes sense. Fair enough. Do you also do that?
Yes. And I love it. I honestly think that's the second best part of this. And maybe some beekeepers, they may not agree. But for me, I love the education piece in this and getting more people excited about it. And so I can relate to Lilian in this way.
Yeah.
You know, you're passionate about what you do, your profession, or maybe you're a hobbyist. You're really passionate about it. You've learned a lot and you want to share that knowledge with other people. And I think this is something really beautiful about beekeeping. And like I said, no matter where you go in the world, you'll find a beekeeper.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a joke in the sense of we like to talk a lot about beekeeping then. And so we'll share a lot with each other, and then you can't get us to be quiet about it. But I would say that really it's the best part is to get other people excited about it, to understand the product, to understand the importance of bees on the environment and providing biodiversity of our plants and different foods that we eat. Since about 1/3 of our food is pollinated by bees. So they are exceptionally important to the food that we're eating every single day.
To the ecosystem as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is not just European honeybees. This is also including the other species of bees that there are. So there's a variety, over 400 species of bees. Even here, there's a lot of different types of bees, and they're working on recording all of the bees found here in Luxembourg. So these European honeybees that I'm talking about beekeeping with, they are considered, they live in colonies, they're social. They produce a larger amount of honey that we can collect. There's local bees, and these bees, or wild bees, these are bees that live in the ecosystem by themselves. So they do not live in colony structures. They do not make a lot of honey. They are only existing to pollinate different plants.
I like how bees can decide whether they want to be part of the colony or whether they want to be like solo, you know.
Solitary bees.
Solitary bees. Yeah. This is amazing. Like, I guess you can't make an independent bee.
Yeah.
Can't make me.
I mean, of course, I mean, we rely upon those bees that the European honey bees that are not so independent. They are, one unit, and they are kind of a community structure. And the solitary bees, they are super independent. They're just out and about by themselves.
And it's not possible to literally like drag an independent bee into a colony.
No.
Holy shit, wow.
I do educate here in Luxembourg. My plan is to continue to. I'm also part of the FUAL, which is the Luxembourg, the Federation of Beekeeping and Apiculture in the country. And if you go to apis.lu, you can learn more about this and even become a member if you're a beekeeper and you're not already a part of it. And so I am a part of the commune of the city of Luxembourg's portion of the federation. There are other communes that also have their own clubs all across the country. And I am very active in the city of Luxembourg club, and it's great because you meet other beekeepers here in the city and beekeepers even outside of the city. And there's conferences we have, different things you can be a part of. Also keeping up with just beekeeping in general in the country. And I would say that I've also been very happy to be able to be a part of the beekeeping community here in Luxembourg. It's very diverse. We have beekeepers in the north, the south, east, west, and we're coming from all different walks of life and from all different places and had been beekeeping maybe in other countries prior to coming to Luxembourg. And so we share a lot of knowledge between each other. And we do a lot of hands-on workshops as well to learn more about beekeeping practices. And for me, I've also done some education with schools here in Luxembourg. And I would say that for me, I'm mainly hoping to educate people by giving them the first kind of opportunity to maybe, if they haven't before, experience what it's like to be a beekeeper. And so you get to come out, you learn about the equipment, you learn how to put on your bee suit, and then you come out and you get to experience what it's like to interact with a colony.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like, I'm yet to try, but
yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
I would totally be down.
Yes.
To doing that. Like, I'm a little bit afraid, am I gonna lie, to be stung by a bee. I can't recall. I think, do you know how memory works? Like, I think that I was stung by a bee. Maybe it was a wasp, most likely, when I was a kid. But now, for the life of me, I can't remember whether that was my imagination or whether that actually happened. I think it happened.
Yes.
But I can't remember.
Of course. I mean, everyone, I feel like most people have been stung by something.
Yeah.
And it's true. Usually people don't know exactly, was it a honeybee? Was it a, European honeybee? Was it a, some other hornet or wasp that you were stung by? Because I can recall, too, being stung when I was younger and crying. And this, I love to teach people so that they can differentiate the different insects that they're interacting with.
Yep.
Because it's really important to know.
I do love bumblebees, though. They are so cute.
They really are.
Fluffy.
Yes.
It's just impossible how cute they are.
Yeah.
It's just, do they pollinate?
Yes, they do. Yeah. So they're pollinators as well, which is great. And, they don't sting. So this is really cool to know. Bumblebees do not. And they're also ground dwelling. So their colonies are on the ground.
Okay. And so they crawl. Oh, so cute.
Yeah, so cute. Fuzzy. Yeah, fuzzy. So fun. And so, I really am passionate about educating about bees, pollinators of all kinds. You do need to be more conscious as a beekeeper of all of the insects, not just the ones you're keeping.
Yeah.
And I would say that I've also found that the beekeeping here, I was able to integrate more with the community here and the environment here, because moving to a new country, you really don't understand the plants. You don't understand what kind of insects are here, what climate is like. And so this has been a great way for me to get into Luxembourgish environment. And understand what kind of plants we're growing, our crops we're growing here, what kind of more wild plants are found here that the bees enjoy foraging on. And, I also have been able to learn a lot from other beekeepers, farmers, environmentalists, naturalists, gardeners, all of the list just goes on and on.
Yeah.
And this is integral to any type of farmer or person who interacts with the environment here, because you need these connections to keep up with the weather and the plants, and these things all impact your bees. So I'm very happy that we have such a great community of beekeepers in the country, and just, people who are passionate about the environment in general.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the best ways of integrating, especially in Luxembourg, where you don't have a lot of avenues, and with the population being divided, literally half and half. Like half is Luxembourgish, or at least Luxembourgish citizens, and then another one is expatriates. Is a politically correct word, also known as migrants. And if you live in Luxembourg City, it becomes, I think, increasingly difficult to get at least at the level of acquainting yourself with the country. And this is why Burgermeisterin exists. This is exactly why we're trying to bridge this gap between, the foreigners and the locals. And really explore the local anything that can be culture, that can be environment, that can be political structures, societal structures, anything. And I've got the last question for you, Sam, which is like a fun question. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned about bees that people don't know?
Oh, this is a great question. Yeah, I would say obviously people know a lot more about bees now than they have in the past. There's a lot of people educating about bees. So the understanding of bees is increased, I think, which is fantastic. But I would say really for me, the most surprising thing that I found about European honeybees function as a superorganism. And when I say superorganism, I mean that if any one part was missing, then the colony would not be able to function. And so really, it's a highly organized social community that these bees are operating in, like we were talking about, where each individual bee work together and then as a single entity. In this system of the hive, you have worker bees, which you've probably heard about, and you have the drones, which are maybe have heard about them as well, and then you have the one queen bee. And the worker bees...
Beyonce.
Yeah, exactly. And so the queen bee is a little misunderstood in the sense that, you think, oh, she's like the queen bee. Yeah. But in this sense, she's more of like a slave to the rest of the colony. In the sense of the rest of the colony dictates, the worker bees primarily dictate how the colony should function. And so they do really every task in the colony. And the worker bees are actually female. There's primarily worker bees in the hive who are female. And then there are the drones, which are the male bees. And the male bees really are in the hive for reproduction. And same with the queen. She's there for reproduction, and she's laying thousands of eggs a day, and she's regenerating the population of the colony. But really, the decisions are made as a whole in the colony. And it's the worker bees that really are the ones who are running the show.
So not only like socialism, but also matriarchy.
Yeah.
Combined.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby, we're here for it.
Yep. And so really, the worker female bees, they're all sisters. And they are running the show. And they need the queen bee to be present. They can actually rear a new queen if they need to, if she somehow dies or something happens to her. So this is something you can learn more about with me if you have more questions about it. Because I was surprised to find out this internal structure of their colony and how the interworkings of the hive really go. And, think about it too. They're doing this all, communicating with each other. They're using certain ways to communicate. And then they also are doing this all in the dark.
Every time I learn something new, like some new detail about, that can be bees, that can be ants, that sounds quite similar to how ants function, Like all these small creatures, like compared to us humans, right? Like I wonder, it's so curious, like imagine like getting into their brains and like trying to understand what they see, right? And how they think they function.
Yes.
It's like, we are total aliens perhaps to them.
Yep.
Right? And we are here. And then there is all this outer space, and who knows what exists there, And like something else is a total alien to us. The world is an amazing
Yes,
It's an amazing nature.
It's an
Yeah.
amazing place.
Amazing place to be a part of. And I feel like the more we are aware, this is all about education, like literally, the more you're aware, the more you're curious to know, to learn, the more highly functioning you become, because it just helps your understanding of how, things work, I guess, in general around you.
Yes, exactly. And it's very important to understand how the natural world works. Because it is so closely linked with us. This is our food. This is how we survive. We need these insects to continue on and to be healthy and thriving and not disappearing.
Totally. Well, Sam, that was amazing. I feel like you're like a subject matter expert that we all needed.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now, maybe 10 years at least. And, I'm no expert. There's always something new to learn about bees and beekeeping and the environment, which is so much fun. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming. Yeah, and I think, too, it just all depends on if you're curious. And you need to just be open and learn more. And I love to love learning more about this topic. So any chance I get to talk about it is great.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much.
Well, I appreciate that you came and that you shared this invaluable knowledge. That was honestly an enormous pleasure to have you here. And if you are interested in beekeeping or what Sam does, you can find all the links to her socials, to her website, and the description to this episode.
Thank you, Julia. I've enjoyed following you on Burgmeisterin and all of the interesting insights that you've been sharing, since this historical background is very important even for me. Being an expat here, moving to Luxembourg and now integrating into the agricultural community here, it's super important for me to get this context in order to understand the community here, the people here. And so I've just been so happy to be a part of this and share also, my knowledge. Obviously, I'm not an expert and I'm still learning, but all of the content that you've been sharing has been amazing for me to get to know the Luxembourgish community better in parallel with the other initiatives that I'm a part of here.
Yeah.
And to really connect with the country and the people here. And so I just want to say thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you.
And I just can't wait to see what else you share next.
Yeah, well, I guess stay tuned for that. But this is the intention. Now, we've been focusing on history. We'll continue focusing on history. Obviously, there's so much to cover about Luxembourg. And anyone who thinks otherwise, please just follow and you'll see. I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove you wrong.
She will prove you wrong.
But I absolutely intend to continue with this idea of connecting the past with the present through a particular